Welcome back to Speak Up English Hub. I am so thrilled you're joining us for today's session of Advanced Listening Practice for Fluency.
Yeah, it is so great to be here. We have a really fantastic lesson lined up today.
We absolutely do. I mean, the goal here is to give you, the listener, some really rich, advanced English vocabulary to soak in, while we also unpack some genuinely life-changing ideas.
Exactly. It's about sharpening those comprehension skills, but also, leaving with something that might just shift your entire perspective.
Right. And today's exploration is all centered around Brianna Wiest's incredibly powerful book, The Mountain Is You.
Which is just a brilliant text.
It really is. It uses this metaphor of a mountain to represent those massive, immovable challenges in our lives. But the twist is, you look closely and realize the mountain isn't made of rock. It's actually constructed out of your own habits and your own unconscious fears.
Yeah, it arises when your conscious desires violently clash with your subconscious need for safety.
Exactly. So whether you are, tackling the challenge of learning a new language like English or trying to build a career, we all face these internal blocks. So our mission today is to decode those blocks.
And to do that, we really have to redefine self-sabotage completely, because the common narrative we hear is just incredibly unhelpful.
Oh, completely. We usually think of self-sabotage as this, character flaw.
Right. We think it's a sign of weakness or laziness.
Yeah.
We assume that if someone ruins their diet or blows up a good relationship, they're just fundamentally broken.
Or that they subconsciously hate themselves.
Yes. But the text reveals a completely different truth. Self-sabotage is actually a highly intelligent, albeit maladaptive, coping mechanism.
A coping mechanism?
Yes. It is a protective system. It happens when you have two conflicting desires. On the surface, you have this conscious desire, like wanting success, but underneath, you have an unconscious desire for safety.
And the safety desire almost always wins, right?
Almost always. Human beings are biologically wired to survive first. The nervous system doesn't really care if you achieve your dreams. It just wants to keep you safe from perceived threats.
Which reminds me of that story about Carl Jung.
Oh, the one from his childhood.
Yeah, it just perfectly illustrates the sheer power of this mechanism. Before he became this famous psychoanalyst, he was just a kid who felt deeply alienated and miserable at school.
He really did not fit in there.
Not at all. And one day, he actually fell in the schoolyard and hit his head. And in that split second of pain, a thought flashed through his mind, which was basically, maybe I won't have to go back to school now.
His brain instantly recognized a loophole.
Exactly. His brain saw a way out. And shortly after that, Jung started experiencing these completely uncontrollable fainting spells.
And he wasn't faking them, which is the crazy part.
Right. It wasn't faking it at all. His subconscious had manufactured a physical neurosis to protect him from the discomfort of school.
It literally associated fainting with the safety of staying home.
Yeah, so to give you all listening an analogy to picture, self-sabotage isn't like a broken engine. It's more like driving a car with one foot pressing the gas pedal, your conscious goals, and the other foot just slamming on the brakes.
That is a perfect way to visualize it.
So if it's this protective mechanism, how do we convince our brains that we don't need the brakes anymore?
Well, first, we have to recognize how the brain applies the brakes in our daily lives. And a lot of this comes down to a concept by Gay Hendricks called the upper limit.
The upper limit. Okay, unpack that for us.
So we all have a baseline tolerance for happiness. When things go too well, we actually hit our upper limit, and we unconsciously sabotage our success to bring ourselves back to a familiar state.
Wait, really? Even if that familiar state is miserable?
Yes, even if it's miserable.
But wait, I have to push back on that. That seems so counterintuitive. You're saying we aren't wired to be happy, we are wired to be comfortable.
Exactly.
That means feeling good can actually trigger a panic response.
It absolutely can. The brain is essentially a prediction machine. It values predictability over everything. If you grew up in chaos, chaos is your baseline.
Wow. So peace actually feels dangerous.
Right. Peace doesn't feel like a reward. It feels like an ambush waiting to happen. Your brain doesn't know the rules of peace.
That is such a brilliant concept for you listeners to ponder. We routinely mistake the discomfort of the unfamiliar for something being wrong. We get a great new job, feel anxious, and think, oh, this is a bad fit.
But it's not a bad fit. It's just unprecedented territory.
So what are the actual symptoms of this? The book outlines some very specific behaviors, right?
Yes. One of the biggest ones is resistance. And this isn't just everyday laziness.
Right, it's that heavy tension when you sit down to do something important.
Exactly. You start procrastinating. Maybe you suddenly decide you need to clean the entire kitchen instead of working on a project.
Guilty as charged.
We all do it. But it's not laziness. Starting something new triggers the fear of the unknown. So your subconscious throws up a wall of resistance to keep you safe.
Makes total sense. And then there's the symptom called uprooting, which I found fascinating.
Uprooting is so interesting because society often praises it. It's the person who gets a new job every year, or moves to a new city constantly, or jumps between relationships.
They look so adventurous on the outside.
They do, but really it's an avoidance strategy. They're constantly starting over to avoid the vulnerability of truly blossoming and being seen.
They just hit the reset button the second things get deep.
Exactly. And the third major symptom is perfectionism.
Oh, the classic socially acceptable flaw.
Right. We wear it like a badge of honor in job interviews. But perfectionism is really just waiting until something is flawless before sharing it.
Which guarantees you never actually have to face criticism.
Or success. Because you never finish the project.
Right. So if discomfort and resistance aren't signs to stop, but just symptoms of hitting our upper limit, we need to learn how to translate these negative emotions, don't we, instead of just running from them.
Absolutely. The text makes a crucial point here. Emotions are not random, and they are not your enemies. They are informants.
I love that word, informants.
Yeah. Triggers don't just exist to show us our pain. They actually show us what we truly value.
So let's look at anger, for example. I feel like most of us are terrified of our own anger.
Completely. We equate it with aggression. But anger isn't aggression. Aggression is a behavior. Anger is actually a guide. It shows us where our boundaries are and what we find unjust.
Right. If you never got angry, you'd never know what you needed to protect.
Exactly. And then there's jealousy, which is a huge one.
Oh, no one wants to admit they are jealous. It feels so petty.
It does, but jealousy is just a cover-up emotion. We judge what others have so we can justify our own lack of action.
Like criticizing a friend's new business model when secretly we just wish we had the guts to start one ourselves.
Spot on. Jealousy actually reveals what we secretly desire for ourselves.
The book uses this incredible metaphor that really helped me visualize all of this. It compares unexpressed emotions to an overflowing email inbox.
That is such a powerful image.
Right. Like if you don't open and process these emotional emails, the backlog just jams your entire operating system.
And it's not just a mental jam. The text highlights that trauma actually gets trapped physically in the body.
In the tissues, right. The fight or flight response.
Yes. The physiological arousal of that suppressed feeling stays locked in your body.
Which brings up a phrase the author uses that I really want to highlight for our advanced English students today: positive disintegration.
That's a great term.
It's this idea that sometimes falling apart, like crying or finally feeling that massive emotional backlog, is actually the body resetting itself. The foundation crumbles, but it's a positive clearing of the jam.
It's a necessary biological reset.
But I have to ask, how do we clear this huge backlog of emails without getting completely overwhelmed by the flood?
Well, that's where we have to tackle the myth of the breakthrough.
The myth of the breakthrough, okay.
Yeah. We are culturally conditioned to think we need a massive cinematic realization to change our lives. The whole movie montage, where you wake up at 5 a.m., throw out all your junk food, and become a new person overnight.
Which never actually works.
No, it's a trap. Huge, sudden changes alert your brain's threat detector, the amygdala, and it immediately slams on the brakes. Real change doesn't happen in massive leaps. It happens in microshifts.
Microshifts, tiny increments of change.
Exactly. A microshift is drinking one extra glass of water. It's reading one single page of a book. It's taking 10 minutes to stretch.
So breakthroughs are just tipping points where all these tiny daily habits finally compound.
That is exactly it. They are just the visible result of microscopic, invisible daily changes.
That takes so much pressure off. You don't have to fix your whole life by tomorrow.
No, you really don't.
No.
And this applies to healing the past, too. Releasing the past isn't about aggressively forcing yourself to let go.
Right, because if you tell yourself not to think of a white elephant, what do you think of?
A white elephant, exactly.
The brain is stubborn.
It is. So instead of fighting the past, you let go by building a new future that is so engaging and demanding of your attention that the past naturally fades away.
Which leads perfectly into that visualization exercise from the book, the Future Self Technique.
Yes, I love this part.
Me too. I want to challenge you, the listener, to try this. You imagine your most powerful, healed future self acting as the CEO of your life.
The CEO framing is so effective.
It really is. So if we start making decisions as that future CEO today, does that bypass the old traumatized inner child that's been running the show?
It absolutely does. Right now, for a lot of people, that scared inner child is making all the executive decisions based purely on avoiding fear.
Right, they want to stay home from school, so to speak.
Exactly. When you step into the role of the future CEO, you aren't ignoring the inner child's fear, but you are saying, I am the adult in the room now. I make the decisions. You shift out of emotional reactivity and into deliberate response.
Wow, and every time you do that, you're making a micro shift.
Exactly. You prove to your nervous system that the unfamiliar didn't hurt you.
So to quickly recap this incredible lesson for our advanced listening students today, self-sabotage is just misguided self-protection. Our emotions are guides, not enemies, and real change happens through daily micro-shifts, not overnight miracles.
It is really about collaborating with your biology instead of constantly fighting it.
Absolutely. And I want to remind you, the listener, that learning advanced English, just like climbing the psychological mountain we've been discussing, requires taking it one micro-shift at a time. Do not overwhelm yourself. Just focus on one new vocabulary word or one new phrasing technique a day. We see your effort, and it is brave to tackle such complex, transformative material in another language.
It really is. You should be very proud of the work you're putting in.
Definitely. So I want to leave you with a final provocative thought from the text to ponder on your own. We spend all this energy viewing the mountain as this unfair obstacle blocking our path. But what if the mountain standing in front of you isn't an obstacle at all? What if it is exactly what you were meant to climb? Because the process of mastering the mountain is actually the process of mastering yourself.
That is a brilliant thought to end on.
Keep taking those micro shifts, keep stepping into that CEO role, and we will see you for our next session on Speak Up English Hub.
Thanks for being with us. See you on our next video. Let's speak up.